Welcome to the Sleep Sense Show. As always, brought to you by the Sleep Sense program, where podcast listeners can get a free customized sleep plan by going to www.sleepsense.net/listen.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm really excited about our guest today. Courtney Allison is joining me for an interview today about her own struggles with some postpartum depression and anxiety after having her daughters. She's also going to share with us the transformation that occurred once she found the Sleep Sense program and started to teach her babies to sleep better. And we know that sleep plays a really significant role in our mental health, so it absolutely is going to at least help minimize some of the symptoms that new moms are experiencing when they have a new baby and are suffering from any kind of baby blues or depression disorders or anxiety disorders. So she's also a therapist. She's been working in the mental health field for several years. She also helps people deal with any kind of grief situations, and has a soft spot in her heart for new mothers and all of the wide variety of challenges and struggles that new moms go through when a baby arrives. So I hope you find the conversation insightful. She definitely gives some tips on what you can do if you feel like you might be struggling a little bit. When to seek out help and how to talk to the people around you who can support you better, and how to put your own self-care at the top of a priority list, which is very important, so that you can start to feel more like yourself again and enjoy this wonderful ride called parenthood. So please stay tuned and listen to our interview. Enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our show. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today. Courtney is with us to talk a little bit about her journey, both with some sleep challenges with her children and also struggling a bit with some postpartum depression and anxiety. And then she's going to share with us today some tips on how you can navigate if you're experiencing some of those feelings or emotions in your journey. So welcome to the show, Courtney.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dana. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. This is such an important topic. I had a few months ago, I had a guest where we sort of did a deeper dive into the postpartum depression discussion, but I think it's one of those conversations that still needs a lot of normalizing. I think there's still, a little bit of perhaps shame or these feelings that we should just martyr ourselves and, push through and be able to handle all of the things that a new mom experiences. So I love opening the door to the conversation and just getting, some deeper insight into what people are going through when they're in the heat of it, and also, what life looks like on the other side when you're through. So why don't you just start, Courtney, and tell us a little bit more about yourself and maybe primarily what led you into your passion as far as your career goes, helping moms and working as a licensed mental health counselor.
Yeah, I would love to. So I am a licensed mental health counselor here in Florida, and I'm in private practice, and I do primarily work with grief and, of course, a lot of anxiety and a lot of work with new moms and families, helping them to adjust to this huge transition that nobody really knows what to expect afterwards. And I also have a YouTube channel that focuses on providing even more additional mental health information for moms and just general topics. And my husband and I have 2 young daughters, and we will actually be celebrating our 16-year wedding anniversary in August. So we've got a lot going on this year. And my journey to becoming a mental health counselor actually started fairly early in my life. I was about 13 years old, and I am an only child. So for me, I was very reserved, very shy. And when I was growing up, I became the person to my friends who would always be the listener and who would give them sort of guidance and advice as much as you can, as a 13-year-old, but they just came to me for that. And so I remember going to my mom and saying, Mom, I really think that I'm good at this and I really like it. So can I do this as a job when I grow up? And she said, sure, a psychologist does that, which a psychologist is quite different than what I do. It's a completely different license. But I just from that day on never faltered from the idea that I was going to be a counselor. And as the years went on, I just took that path in undergraduate. And then my mom, unfortunately, passed away about 4 days before I was going to start my program to become a counselor, my graduate school program. And that is how I actually ended up specializing in grief, because I went through this sort of challenge saying, should I just go ahead and take a year off and grieve for my mom? And I decided not to, because I knew that she would be so mad at me if I put my dream on hold,
Right.
Because she passed away. She had multiple sclerosis, so to some extent we did expect this to happen, but still, you've lost your mom. And I was only 24 at the time when I lost her. So along the way in my program, I decided right at the end that, the best therapists, I feel like, have a story to tell. And if I'm able to help someone go through grief and work through that from my perspective, I think it's helpful. And then, of course, after becoming a mom and doing the struggles that I went through, then I added all of that to my practice, because moms need help. Mm-hmm. They do not know what is going on after this. And no matter how much we tell them, it's still I think one of the hardest transitions we will ever go through.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So let's sort of travel back in time a little bit to when you were a new mom, and give us some insight into, what was going on for you, and sort of when you decided that the feelings you were having, might need some outside help, and how you navigated that.
Okay, sure. So my first daughter was born in 2013, and she was never a good sleeper from the beginning. She was always very challenging, and I think part of that came from she was diagnosed with a VSD, which is a medium-sized hole in her heart. So there were a lot of issues with feeding, and I think that sort of wrapped itself into the sleeping, because I doubt she ever really got totally full. And we just did not know what to do. We were sort of under the impression, I think, like a lot of new parents, that, this is going to be simple. She's going to eat and sleep, and it's going to be easy, and our lives are going to be the same. And we quickly found out after about the first 3 weeks, when she got into the more wide awake, that this was not going to be an easy time for us. She did the whole 30-minute nap, or sometimes even 20-minute naps. And for me, that's where primarily with her, I had the postpartum anxiety, because I can distinctly remember around the 6 to 8 week mark just struggling so much with not knowing what to do, and struggling a lot with how can I spend all this time trying to put my baby to sleep and then not having the time for me, because I'm an introvert and I really need the downtime if I'm going to recharge. And I just remember feeling every day, right around 5 o'clock, I would start to get the biggest mood drop, the biggest worries and fears about what was going to come for the night, and how are we going to get her down, and how much sleep was I going to get, or how much sleep was I going to lose. And as a therapist, you would think it would click into my head, and, I would say, well, I need help, but I didn't at first. And there were so many days when she just would not nap at all. And I remember my husband coming home one day, and I was just sobbing in the rocking chair. And he came in and said, what is wrong? And I said, she didn't nap at all, and I don't know what to do. And I mean, I was just losing it, really. And, luckily he came over kindly and grabbed her, and he said, I'm going to take her. You go take a shower. And it was kind of at that point when I thought, this is not me. I mean, I know this is a hard transition, but when it gets to a point where you feel like you're just really out of control, you don't know which emotions are coming next, and you have no plan as to how to get around that and how to get to a better place, that's when I said, I got to go to the doctor. And she said, Courtney, I knew at your 6-week checkup that you were not yourself. I did not feel like you were bonding with your baby, and I'm so glad you came in. And I ended up going on both antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. And boy, was that helpful for me. Just a complete difference.
Right. And so as far as we know, and I know you had mentioned this in your email to me, how important that foundation of good quality sleep is. And I mean, we've got a newborn baby here on our hands, so we all know that fragmented sleep and losing sleep is going to be part of the deal. But tell us a little bit about your sleep journey. Once you get yourself sort of on the proper medication and start seeing, the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit, when did you decide to start making some steps towards getting baby to sleep better?
Yes. So we decided to do this. I believe she was I'm going to say she was somewhere between 8 to 10 weeks, and we just knew this is not right. We could not get a hold on it. We didn't know what to do. We had done no research prior, which many parents don't. And I remember just finding your website, and something about it just spoke to me, just the way that the confidence that you have in your program. And also when you said, the money back guarantee, if it doesn't work, then just tell me. Right. And I remember coming to my husband and I said, we've got to do something. I need a plan. Because that's kind of how I am. If someone tells me how to do something, I'll figure it out. But if I need to figure it out by myself, a lot of times it's very overwhelming for me. And I remember just you getting the book and reading through it and saying, we've got it, we just have to do this together. We have to take the teamwork approach. And it was the most life-changing thing. Yes, it was hard. And I remember both of us, listening to her cry those first few nights and just staring at each other and just not knowing what to do. But then when she got past, I'm going to say it was maybe night 7, when we just literally put her in the crib and walked out of the room and she was silent and went to sleep and slept all night, it was like, oh my gosh, this really worked. It worked. And I will tell you, my anxiety completely, I'm sure there was an underlying bit of it going on just being postpartum, but my anxiety just left. And that's how I knew that it was directly related to the sleep and needing that time for me, and also wanting to make sure that I was doing for her what she needed. Just like you tell us all the time with your program, you're giving your child a skill that is not only good for them, but it is good for you as a parent to have a child that knows how to do this. And there's nothing in life that doesn't come with some struggle. So if our children learn to struggle a little bit when they're young and learn this good skill, I just don't think there's anything negative that comes with that.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's, especially when you're feeling sleep deprived, you've got all these emotions swirling, you want to do what's right for your baby, and the road can be a little rocky, right? There's so many conflicting pieces of advice, and everybody has a tidbit to share, and it's very hard to see the forest for the trees when you're in the heat of all of these things swirling. And so getting a plan, like you mentioned, I think is really helpful for a lot of moms to just have that guidance through it all to kind of get you to a place where you can make decisions more clearly and you understand sort of the pros and cons of why and how and what you're doing. And then you're right, when you start to get a few solid nights of sleep under your belt again, the changes that makes to a person's well-being, and your focus and your attention and your mood. I mean, we know that sleep plays a significant role in every function of our lives. So talk to us a little bit about that. You have another daughter as well, and the journey or the differences maybe that came the second time around.
Yes. So that was, I think we were blessed. I think God and the universe said, okay, these two went through a lot with their first baby, and we're not going to have them do this with the second baby. So we started right off with our second daughter. Now, our second daughter was totally different. She was a much higher birth weight, and she had no identifiable health problems. But I remember rereading the book, because I had printed out the book that you sent us when we purchased it the first time. And I said, we've got to start early. We have to, because I can't do this again. And I was very fearful of how is this going to be if I go through those sleep challenges again. I just don't know what's going to happen. So I actually just, from the moment Aria came home, I started kind of letting her do it on her own. And we did a lot of the same steps that you taught us. And she just caught on faster. I think that she was just naturally a better sleeper, and we were just calmer because we had the knowledge and we weren't extremely fearful and extremely, sort of uneducated on what babies need and what the process is. And with her, she did give us some trouble, but I think when we snapped back in and said, no, we've got to teach her. We've got to make sure that she can understand that not only does she need to do this, but that she can do this. And I'm going to say with Aria, she actually started sleeping through the night when she was about 8 weeks old, which I know is not common, but it's because we did things in the beginning with her. From the second she came home from the hospital, we would just sort of lay her down in the crib and see what happened. And if she gave us a fight, we comforted her a lot, but we did a lot of the same things that you tell us to do, kind of being in the room and then scooting out, a little further and a little further. And then eventually she just kind of caught on. Yeah. And it was a vastly different experience. And it's because we had that knowledge. And if you don't have the knowledge, it's a totally different situation. So there's nothing wrong with asking for help and then giving that help to your friends and your other children and just making sure that, they know you can do this and we have faith in you that you can do this.
Yeah, that's a great point. I went through it myself, having 3 children, the first of which was a terrible sleeper, which led me to create the Sleep Sense program. But having a second and third child, and knowing, right? I think education is power. And if you know, even the foundation of what does sleep needs look like for a newborn baby, if you know that piece, you can just guide them gently down the right road. It doesn't require a whole lot of effort or work. If you just put a few things in place for this little person, the biological function of sleep just kind of kicks in on its own. And a similar situation with my second and third babies, they were pretty much straight through the night by 10 weeks, and just makes that early stage, more manageable because you're moving in the right direction. You're getting, increments of sleep that are lengthening, so you're catching up a little bit on your own sleep debt. And then by the time this baby's sort of through the newborn phase, you're getting almost solid nights of sleep again. It makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And Aria is such a champion. She is about to turn 4 in October. And I'll tell you, she still will take 2 to 3 hour naps every day and sleep all through the night.
Wow.
So, yeah,
that's great.
She is a champion sleeper.
That is super awesome. Great to hear. So let's look now at some of our listeners who, might be sort of in that place, of discomfort where they're struggling with some emotions and anxiety. I mean, I think what we need to keep always in our mind is that, feeling insecure and feeling a little out of your depth and having some doubts and fears, that's really super normal, right? Like being a new parent, you're just a whole pile of responsibility is put upon your lap, the instant this baby is basically conceived. So that's going to be just a normal scope of emotions. So when do you see, or what are some of the maybe red flags where some of these normal experiences and emotions maybe sort of starts shifting or sliding over into something a bit more serious?
Yeah, so with postpartum depression, what I would say is the most sort of red flag is if it does not sort of decrease a little bit or get a little more manageable for you after that first initial, I'm going to say, first 2 or 3 months, because those are really the hardest months. You're going to feel depressed. You're going to feel sad. You're going to feel scared. But when your attempts to manage it, getting the extra sleep or making sure you're getting exercise or even taking medication, when you start to see those not helping or when you start to see it increase instead of decrease, I think that's when you really have to say, this is not something that's just run-of-the-mill baby blues or even run-of-the-mill depression, because I even think there's a large difference between run-of-the-mill depression that we would see, just in someone who maybe doesn't have kids or even someone who's has older kids, and postpartum depression. I think it's very, very different. And I think it gets a hold on maybe even different parts of our bodies and our brain. So I think when you say, okay, this is not getting better, maybe I have done sleep training, or maybe my child is getting to a better and easier stage, but my feelings are getting more serious, then you would think, okay, I'm in a different spot. And of course, if you're feeling like you are not bonding with your baby, if you're feeling like you're just not connected, if you're, of course, having those really scary thoughts of harming your baby or harming yourself, that's a red flag no matter what. For run-of-the-mill depression, for baby blues, that's a warning sign that you definitely want to pay close attention to and seek help immediately. Do not be afraid to admit it. And I think that's what happens to all moms, including myself, is why am I feeling this way? I was literally made to bear children and to raise them. And now I'm feeling sad and I can't connect and I can't get them to sleep and I can't get them to eat. So that weighs on our just general identity as a mom and the responsibilities we feel that we have. And then we end up suffering in silence because there is shame, like you mentioned before. And unfortunately, there are also some husbands and partners who don't support moms out there. So make sure you've got some support around you and reach out for help, when those things are coming. And with anxiety, I would say it's similar. I would say if you're having anxiety from the moment you wake up in the morning until the moment you fall asleep at night and nothing is helping, deep breathing, trying to reframe your thoughts, taking your breaks, when it's just relentless and it does sort of increase over time, that's when you need to say, there's help out there. I don't have to do this alone, and I can do some things. There are people out there who can help. There are programs out there that can help. There's medication out there that can help. And you're doing it, again, for yourself, you're doing it for your family, and you're doing it for just your baby. And you've got to be a real good mom. You've got to be your best if you want to be the best for your family and your friends.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. One of the things that I see all the time, and it's, it's one of, if I could get through to a mom about one thing and have her hear me, it's this idea that she has to do everything herself. Like this idea that, I have to do the childcare, I have to maintain the household, I've got to get the groceries, I've got to do the laundry, I have to do all of these things. It's just this long list of have-tos, right? That moms feel like they have to do. And that, I think, can escalate some of these feelings, especially around anxiety. If you're already feeling low level or even high levels of anxiety, then adding to, 10 things to your to-do list in the day is just going to make that situation even worse. And so what would be your advice? I mean, how do you take even just baby steps into either letting some things go or asking for help is what I really want moms to start stepping into and really owning that this is not a job that was meant to be single-handedly done. And so how can she start to take steps into by taking care of herself, which means letting go of some of those tasks?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Such good points. And I think that you first have to acknowledge it. When I work with clients, that is the first thing. When they say, what can I do? I want to make sure that they are acknowledging that this is an issue, because sometimes we have people come in and they say, I'm doing it all, and they're upset, but they don't really feel it's a problem. They just say, well, this is the way it is. So let's first acknowledge, this is a problem and I don't like the way it is and I want it to change. And then let's figure out, how can it change? So what are the responsibilities, whether with the children or around the home, or even better, both, that you can delegate either to your spouse or partner or to some family members who can maybe come over and help, or even to some friends. Your friends are there to help, and hopefully they are coming to you and saying, what can I do? And then ask for that. Say, hey, when you get home from work, if you've got a spouse or partner that works, I need you to take the baby for this amount of time so I can go do all these tasks that I want to do. And make sure that you have some self-care alone time every day. I tell my clients, even if it's 5 minutes, I really don't care. If it is 5 minutes every single day, you're doing much better than when it was 0 minutes. And as the kids get older, you will see a little more of that self-care coming in, but make sure that you're not always working. We're not meant to work from the second we put our feet down in the morning until the second we close our eyes. We have to recharge our bodies, or eventually you are going to see an explosion of sadness and frustration and anxiety and depression. It's going to be hard to break that cycle until you say, we must change, and here's how we can divide things up.
Yes, excellent. So besides getting, so tip number 1 would be make sure you have some time for yourself in a day, whatever that looks like. Carve it out, plan it out. What are some other tips we can offer moms?
So I would say make sure that you are spending some time with people who build you up. Make sure that you are removing people from your life who are unsupportive, who are just not very understanding to your situation, and make sure that you have people who you can talk to about this, who can support you. Get some therapy. That's going to be 45 minutes to an hour every single week where you can just talk and vent to a therapist. Make sure you're having some sort of night with your friends, make sure you're getting out and replenishing yourself. And that sort of kind of goes to the self-care, but it's also getting yourself out of the role of being a mom or being a homemaker. And just make sure that you are putting yourself in a position where you can do that. And just acknowledging, again, like I said before, make sure that you understand that this is what I want. These are the things that I want to change, and these are the things that I can control. I think that's another good tip is we feel out of control with a lot of these things. And when you can break it down and say, okay, but what are the things that I can control that will make me feel a little bit better and a little bit less stressed, such as letting the laundry go or letting the dishes go or, letting the cleaning go or things like that. You can do that. The stuff can wait. Your mental health cannot wait. All of the other things in life can wait, or they can also be delegated out to someone else who can gladly take it on, and they can help you out, and you're going to really feel much better at the end of the day after you do some of those things.
Yeah, I agree. I think, too, one of the things, having sort of seen some close friends go through, especially the postpartum depression piece, it's almost important that you realize that you might not feel like it, but you'll feel better after it, if that makes sense. Like if you feel super down, it's hard sometimes to change out of your sweatpants and go out with your girlfriends. Like it requires some effort, doesn't it? It requires a little oomph to get you out the door because you're not feeling good. But the experience of being with those people that can support and lift you up and make you feel, important and loved and not alone, the after effects are what's really going to start changing, or making, at least helping in your recovery.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I think what we do and what stops us from dealing with any sort of anxiety or depression or dealing with any of these things is, you're right, we tell ourselves, no, I don't deserve this, or it's too hard, or it just feels better for me to be able to stay in my sweatpants. But you're absolutely right. Taking pride in yourself and taking pride in what you want to do and what you can do really makes a difference. Putting on, even changing out of your pajamas or something into some different clothes for the day can really make a big difference. If you say, well, I'm going to go on a walk, because that will most definitely help with your depression. Mm-hmm. We can say a lot of things. Well, I don't want to. It's hot out there. It's going to take a lot. But just do it.
Right.
And it will help. As soon as you get out and you take those first few steps and you take a breath, you're going to remember why you did this. And the guilt is going to just fade away.
Yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of cases, it's the starting that's the hardest part, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And how about as far as partnerships? I think you mentioned earlier, sometimes your spouse is super supportive and maybe is even seeing this before you do, right? Like maybe they're the ones saying, hey, you seem, not quite yourself these days. You might have that scenario, but you might also have a partner who that conversation is a little harder, or they can't quite see what's exactly happening and the struggles that you're going through. So maybe give a few tips on how you have those conversations with your partner.
Yes. So, if it's coming from the partner who's not struggling, the absolute best thing that you can do is come to your partner and say, I've noticed that you've been struggling a little bit. You've been seeming sad. You seem a little stressed out. How can I help you? Mm-hmm. That is the most wonderful thing you can say, because then you're not putting blame. I think a lot of people may come to your partner and say, well, why aren't you doing this? Or why can't you do this? Or why is it so hard? And that puts blame on the partner who is struggling. And if you do that, that other partner is going to shut down immediately, or they're going to come back at you quite aggressively. And then that conversation is going to be dead in the water for quite some time. So if you say, how can I help you? Then that person can be responsible for saying, here's what I need. And I think for a mom or any parent who is struggling, just the opportunity of someone coming and saying, how can I help? Then that might open up the door and say, oh my gosh, yes, could you help me with the bath at night? Could you help me prepare dinner? Could you help me get them dressed? Could you, there's a number of things that you could do, and just making sure that then you follow through with that. So I think a lot of us may ask for help, but then when the time comes, we get a little possessive. Right. And we're like, no, I can do it. You don't do it right, and all that. And that's another good point, is make sure if you ask for help, if the person does it differently than you might do it, it's fine.
Right.
As long as the result is the same, life is going to go on. It's going to be just fine. So make sure that you're following through. And that goes for that partner too. If you're asking how you can help, let's not make this just a one-time thing. Let's make sure that you're following through and continuing to check in and saying, how are you doing? Or even following up and saying, you seem like you're doing a lot better. You seem happier. You seem like you've got this more under control. Because that can go a long way for a parent who is struggling. Because that's another sort of a thankless job a lot of times. Our kids aren't always saying, thank you for, teaching me to sleep, and thank you for feeding me. So making sure that we appreciate each other goes both ways. Thank you for helping me. Thank you for noticing. Making sure that if we see the other person struggling, just kind of coming in and maybe putting a hand on your shoulder and saying, I've got this, or go take a rest. That goes a long way.
Absolutely. I love that. That's great advice. And so what else would you like, and if there's moms listening that you would really like, again, that sort of, if you could just hear this one piece of advice, what would that be to the mom listening?
So I would say, moms, just know that even though it's hard, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you can't make things easier on yourself. Just the fact that you feel like it's hard and you feel like you're struggling and you're wondering, how can I do this? I think that in itself shows that you're a good mom and that you're a good parent. And that means that you're giving yourself the opportunity to say, okay, if it's hard right now, I can overcome this struggle. There is no struggle out there that is going to break you. You have the opportunity with every struggle to learn something. And that is exactly what being a parent is. It's going through struggles and it's going through adjustments, and it's coming out on the other side with a whole new identity and a whole new set of skills for you, and also knowing that you have taught this little person a whole new set of skills and given them skills for life. So never feel like it's a failure. Never feel like there's a way out. And always remember, you have learned and you have overcome it. And this struggle does not define you.
That's great advice. I love that. I think for me, my parenting journey has been 18 years long, and I've really tried to adopt that core philosophy that, if I'm having a struggle or there's something going on in our family that just doesn't feel right, that there are solutions and there is a way to learn and change and do it a bit better. Being miserable and unhappy is never the way I want to live my life. I certainly don't want that for my listeners either. So, don't hang on to this, oh, well, this is my life. Maybe someday it'll be better. It can always be better. And you can always learn something new or try a different strategy or reach out for help and make this, this is your one precious life. Let's make it, the best one that it can be. And that includes the experience of being a parent.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So, so, so true. And it is so rewarding in the end. Yes, it's hard. Absolutely. Your life is 100% different than it was before, but it is such a blessing and it is such an honor to be a parent and to come out on the other side and say, wow, look at what we did and look at this beautiful life and this beautiful family that we have created. Yes,
I agree. Awesome. Well, that's a great place to wrap this up. So, Courtney, tell our listeners where they can find out a little bit more about you or potentially catch you on your YouTube channel.
Sure. So I have a website, and that is healingwithtime.com. And you can also follow me over on Instagram, and that is @thegirlwithoutamom. And my YouTube channel is the same. It is The Girl Without a Mom as well. And we post videos every single Thursday.
Awesome. Good stuff. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your story and your tips with us. I think that was very helpful to those listening. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate you being here. And as always, please sleep well.
Thanks so much for listening. For more great tips on helping your child sleep through the night, remember to subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher, and never miss an episode.